Hey, we're so glad you're with us today and are worshiping and celebrating. And we're going to continue this series that we started last week with You Are Here. And we talked last week a little bit about what that would look like. And, if we dropped pins in our location and say, where are we? And we used a little diagram that we'd put up last week. And if you have not had a chance, if you were not able to be here with us, I encourage you to maybe go online and take a few minutes and watch the service. You can pull up the messages and see what was happening. But we encourage you to look at that. And I just want to kind of recap real quick that what we were talking about. We talked about this grid that we drew up there on the board, and we said, this is what we believe is in one of the areas of our life that we kind of start somewhere, that we all begin here at Lost. And that's, we're there. We're born there. We're totally dependent on somebody to take care of us, our felt needs, our health, our food, all of those things. We begin there, but we can't stay there. We have to move forward. We can't, as appealing as it would be to stay in our parents' basement, we can't. We gotta move out. We gotta go. And so we go to this next quadrant here, which is the law. And this is where we receive that instruction. This is where we learn things from parents, teachers, coaches, pastors, where people that have influence on our life begin to teach us things that are important, and we pass down. And we start out, kind of low key with, don't run with scissors, don't eat glue, those things. And it builds, and hopefully we learn other things as well, where you should have no other gods before me, that you're to love God, love people, that you're not to steal or murder or lie. And we teach these things in the law. And so what happens is hopefully that we move from lost to law, and it will immediately, because of the instruction we receive, will move us here into this love relationship with God. And that works. There are people that go through that, just like the Israelites when they left Egypt and they were slaves and did not know who they belonged to, and they were lost and empty and void. And they go through the Red Sea, and the first thing that God does is through Moses, he gives them the law. He hands it to them. And this is how you will live, because it's not about rules of prevention. It is about relationship. And this works. But for some of us, it's really hard, and maybe rebellious, or we just hear rules, and we don't think it really applies to us. And sometimes we just kind of bow up, and we say, who are you to tell me how to live? Who are you to tell me this is what it means? And so we jump down into this quadrant, and this is where we call lust. And I gave it the title here, People, Pills, and Pizza. You giggled last week too. And this is where we jump over here. We leave the rules and we go here and we think, I'm going to make my own rules that I'm going to live by. And we tend to use people, and we tend to use our relationships, either physically or emotionally or financially. We use people. We get what we want and we move on. Or we move down and there's a substance. It's something that we abuse, alcohol, drugs. It's some substance that we put in and we take care of ourselves that way. We self-medicate the pain. Or it's pizza or shopping or pornography or whatever you want to call it, wherever that little tag is right there, that's where we self-medicate ourselves, because there's this hole in our heart from the very beginning that has to be filled, that we long for this relationship with God. So there are people that come here to lust, and what we hope again is that we come right over here to this love relationship. That's where we want to be. It's where we crave to be. But sometimes it doesn't happen, because here leaves us empty. So we jump back up to the law and we think, hey, at least up there I had some value. And that's where I was. And I can at least up there. So I'm going to read the Bible more. I'm going to be in more Bible studies. I'm going to attend church more. I'm going to do all these things. And not only that, but I'm going to read the Bible in the next 3 weeks, the whole thing. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to quit work and study. Because if I get better here, it's all about that performance. If I get better there, then I'll feel better. And what it does is, again, it leaves us feeling empty. It doesn't lead us here, so we go back and forth. And what happens is we come back over here, and emotionally or physically, we just isolate ourselves. We just get rid of people. We're done. We just don't know what to do. Our heart is hurting so heavy that following enough rules and performing at a high level is not good enough. The pain, I can't fill it with enough people, pills, or pizza. I can't do either of those things. And so I just go into isolation. I hibernate from the world because my pain is so great. So if this is where we want to be here in this love relationship. We want to be there. And that's what we feel like God's calling us to. That's what we feel that God is really inviting us into this love relationship. What does that mean? And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? And frankly, I wonder if there are people that make these proclamations in their life, they get excited, and they come and they're like, yes, I believe. Yet they jump down in this love relationship, this fourth quadrant here, and they're only there for a short time. It's almost like a short fuse that fizzles out. That they're there, they fully love, they're fully engaged, and then something happens. How is it? How is it? I mean, is this what's preventing people from staying in a relationship? What's preventive in our life and our culture that keeps us there? What makes us fall out of this? I mean, how does this happen? I mean, God's standards haven't changed from the very beginning till now. His standards haven't changed. They will never change. They're not outdated. I mean, the things that they were telling the Israelites as they crossed the Red Sea, the things that Jesus was teaching, that Paul taught in all the letters to the churches, the early church, they're still relevant today. I mean, the Bible is the number one book of all time, is the most translated book in the history of publication. So we know that there's some truth there that is, so even if you said, listen, I'm not even sure I believe all this, at least we could agree there that there is some standards of behavior that are good. There are standards of behavior that are right, and they lead us to this point in time. You know, there's just some things that, how do we get out of this love relationship? I mean, I wonder if for some people that they're going back and forth between law and lust, and they realize the wheels have come off. The wheels have come off in their life, that they're hurting beyond anything they can comprehend. And so all of a sudden they begin to think, what can I do? What can I do? I know, I'll follow Jesus. And the relationship with Christ is not a relationship per se, but it's the get out of jail free card. Now my family, when I growing up, we were Monopoly junkies. And the get out of jail free card was the win, right? You get that and you just save it because there'd be a time when you ended up there and you'd want to use it. But see, our relationship with Christ does not give us a free pass to ignore the guidelines and standards that he set before us. They don't give us this pass to say, okay, you're in. It's not this hyper grace movement that says, come to me, but do whatever you want because you're in. Because I so love you that I will put down my standards because I so love you. That the very standards of who I am, the very essence of who God is, he would say that I love you so much, just go do whatever. Because that's silly. No one raises their children and just says, listen, if you want to play with dynamite and that makes you happy, go ahead. Nobody. If you want to put your tongue on the hot stove, that's okay. You deserve to have it your way. Nobody does that. Nobody. We jump. I mean, we wrap our children in bubble wrap to put them on a bicycle, right? And so would we not expect anything less from a loving God? So this whole journey is to lead us to this right relationship with him. I mean, is it possible? What causes people to say, listen, this heart that I have longed for, I no longer want. I would rather go back here or even go to loss. What would cause them to do that? What causes us to hibernate in a lost condition? I mean, is it possible that at some point God would reject or rescind his offer? Would it be possible that this loving God who's calling us out into this love relationship would say to us, you know what, after further review, I've decided you've made too many mistakes in your life. You've failed here, here, and here. You've done things with people that I just can't seem to get off the dry board. So I'm going to have to rescind my offer or invitation to you. I mean, I'm sure everybody in the room at some point in your life, you've been rejected for a loan. That they tell you initially, you got it. We're going to help you buy that house or that car. You've got it. You have been accepted. And you get excited about it, and then all of a sudden you get this form letter in the mail that says, I'm sorry to inform you, because of something you did right out of high school or college, we cannot loan you the money. And so we're kind of used to that type of rejection, that we've been told one thing and we get sold something else. So maybe we expect that. But in John 10:28, it says, I give eternal life. And further down in that verse, it says, no one will snatch you out of my hands. So I got to believe that God doesn't just willy-nilly reject us. I mean, how do I get my salvation, this relationship, to stick? How do I get it to really take in my life? How do I get it to really take the next step? I mean, because what happens, I believe, is there's these emotional encounters with God that we have this point in time. Either it's in a study that you're in with a group of people, a book that you have read, a song that you hear. Maybe you've been in a church service, much like this morning, and you've come in with a heavy heart, burdens. And there has been that word that has been spoken, a song that has been sung. Maybe it's even somebody in the room pulled you aside and said, hey, I know you've had a tough day. I know you've had a tough week. Can I just pray for you? And something happens inside of us that we fester up and we break, and we think, God, I don't know what it is, but I need you. Maybe I need you. And so our faith journey begins, and we feel this rush of emotion, this loved essence that, oh my goodness, something has changed in my life. Something has changed. And we crave the way that feels in the beginning. We long for it. It's kind of like when you first start dating someone. Do you remember, if you've been married a long time, go back to high school or college or in your 20s. When you would stay on the phone, okay, now and it had cords. It wasn't mobile, remember? And you would say things like, you hang up. No, you hang up. and the guy would always, you remember? And you long for that. And then you've dated like 3 months and you're like, where do you want to eat? Let's go get a movie and go through McDonald's. That's not the way it was. But in the very beginning, it was this excitement. You couldn't wait. You couldn't wait to be near them. And when you were in high school, you were writing. It was before texting and all that. You were writing notes. You have no idea what happened in our history. You couldn't pass science again to save your soul, but you wrote 6-page notes to that girl or to that guy. And you carved her name in your desk. And you wrote with marker on your hands. And you craved that. Well, it's that same way. We have this moment with Jesus, and we're like, I'm all in. I'm so fired up. I'm so excited. I am all in. I'm all in. What do I got to do? What do I got to go? And then all of a sudden, some time goes by, and you're like, I want to be all in, but I don't feel all in. I'm not. God, are you there? What happened? What do I got to do to fix this? Maybe it didn't take. Maybe what I was wanting to do just didn't stick. Maybe it's not real. Maybe Jesus, where are you? What's going on? We want that feeling. We want that rush of emotion. And so there are people that move point A to point B to point C and down the line because they're always moving to the next emotional high, the next excitement level, the next firework, the next explosion. whatever it may be in their life, that next emotional buzz to where they can go, good, I feel Jesus again. I feel something. I mean, and frankly, that leaves us all a little defeated because we're not always going to feel like it's just this home run. We're not always going to feel like every time at bat, Montero's going to hit a grand slam, right? Now, that cat can go 0 for the rest of the series, but we'll remember him for what he did last night. It's the same way in our spiritual life. There are times you're not going to hit a home run. It's not going to feel like it's all there. But I believe that God is calling us into this deeper journey more than just believing. He's calling us to move from an independence of ourselves where we feel like I can do it myself. There's a lot of self-help books out there that say all you got to do is believe in you. All you got to do, that you're your own source of power. And there is some nuggets of truth there, but there's also a lot of downside to that. Because we believe in our faith, the journey that you and I are on here, that we believe that our faith, that we do have to believe in what God has equipped us with. But we also have to believe that everything happens for His perfect will, that we believe in Him, we don't believe in me. I have zero faith in my own abilities. I have even less faith in yours, okay? I believe in what God can do. And that's where we're at. But see, there's books that'll tell us the other. But we want to move from this independent, strong will, I can do it my way, to a total dependence on Him. And I wonder if it's possible that why we get disappointed here and maybe even retreat is that we've got this misunderstanding of what it means to live a holy life. I wonder if we have this misunderstanding. Up on the screen, you'll see 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 through 16. This is what it says. It says, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at His coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as He who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. So this divine quality of holiness, this very essence of the intrinsic nature of God, He is holy. Now, there are two basic aspects of holiness. The first one is uniqueness, that God is totally separate from all creation. He is not created. He is the creator. He is totally separate. We cannot put Him in any category with any lowercase g gods. He stands alone. He is totally unique. Exodus 15:11 says, who among the gods is like you? 1 Samuel 2:2 says this, there is no one holy like our God. Let's read Isaiah chapter 6, verse 2 and 3. I want to read the last part of this verse. This is the one that really pops. It'll be up on the screen. It says, above Him were the seraphim, each with 6 wings. But down below it says, and they were calling to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. So understanding that God's uniqueness, He's the one and only. When He talked to Moses in the burning bush, He goes, I am the great I am. He is identifying Himself not in correlation with anybody else. And when you're watching SportsCenter, or you're watching in the movies, or you're watching songs, we always have to compare someone to somebody else. In this area, we always say, is LeBron as good as Michael Jordan? We want to compare there. But 25 years ago, we said, is this person as good as the person that played 50 years ago? It's a comparison. But there is no one, nobody, no thing we can compare God to. He is totally unique. Totally unique. He is the creator, not the creation. The second aspect of holiness and God and His holiness is it is absolute pure. He has been unstained by this evil world. Unstained, unmoved, unchallenged. It says in James 1:13, He's not even been tempted by the evil world. There is nothing here in the evil that has been present since the fall in the garden that made God go, maybe they're right. There's been nothing that has happened in all of time and history where God has said, you know what, I think I messed up here. Hadn't happened. In Leviticus chapter 11, verses 44 through 45 says this. It says, I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, be holy, because I am holy. It is almost like God is allergic to evil. He just can't be in that presence with sin. He can't be in that presence of evilness. He is so unique and so pure that his holiness is the very essence of who he is. He cannot be in the same room with it. He can't be in any type of way pushed there. So we serve this holy God who is unique and he is pure. So there's an issue because you and I don't measure up, right? I mean, we've talked about this. But this is this basic theological problem, this quandary that we're stuck with, is that this God, this holy God, unique and pure, wants to be in fellowship with us. And by fellowship means he wants to be involved in our everyday life. He is not a creator who said, here's my creation, now I'll step back and let him just live. Whatever happens, happens. It's not true. It says, I want to live in fellowship. In the very beginning, in the garden, this original plan that God was walking and talking with Adam and Eve. The original plan was for that we would be in community. We've said this for the last few weeks. You and I were made to live in community. It's part of our DNA, that if we took it out, there is a gene that says, I need to be with people. I need to be in fellowship. I crave it. I need it. And God made us that way because he wants to live in fellowship with us. He wants to be in this unity. He wants to be bonded with us. He wants to hear your stories. He wants you to tell him how your day went. He wants to know what the kids are doing. He wants to know what work looked like. He wants to know what your struggles are. He wants to know what your hurts are. And see, so for some of us, we believe because there's this gap between us that we know that he is unique and we know that he is pure, that gap then creates him as this cosmic bully waiting to strike us down. Because if we go to him and we tell him that our hurts, our hang-ups, our habits, we go and tell him those things, that obviously, boom, he's going to call down the thunder. We believe it. But that's not it at all. When he's craving to be in this relationship with us, it's about knowing exactly where you're at. You are here. And he wants to know what's happening. He wants to know what you feel. He wants to know what's eating at you. But see, since God cannot become less holy, he can't go against his very nature of who he is. He can't become less holy, so then we must become more holy. What? So we got to fill that gap somehow. And what God does, he does not lower himself down, he raises us up. Because I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out why the creator of the universe, why creator God wants to spend time with us. I don't know. I don't quite understand that. I know that we're unique among all the creation. I get that. And I know that he loves us still. I get all that. But he really, really wants to be with us. And he wants to be in fellowship with us. And so he had to devise this plan of how could this work without losing his own holiness, without going against his very nature. And he knew to do this, he had to have this plan that would require a perfect sacrifice. And so what he did was nearly 2,000 years ago, he sends his son to die in our place so that we would be saved. In John 3:16, so for God so loved the world that he sent his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. So we can't do anything to be more holy. Holy is not a system of rules to follow. It's not an ordinance that we would look a certain way. Holiness is an attribute of God. It's the very essence of who he is. He is holy. And all through Scripture, you will find where he says, I am holy, therefore you be holy. So how does that work? I mean, if you grew up in the church, and you've been around a little while, not just in the last 5 to 10 years, but when I was a kid, holiness had some different pictures to it. There was the women that had the hair in the bun. There was no makeup. There was no jewelry. There was no rings. There was nothing that would lead to worldly endeavors. There was, it brings back images of revival meetings and gospel trios and old-time religion. There was those things. And there was these stern prohibitions against drinking and dancing and playing cards. They used to say when I was going to youth camp in the high school that they'd say no mixed bathing. That's what they called swimming. The church camp that I went to had a chalk line down the road. The boys walked on one side, the girls walked on the other, because we wanted to keep us pure. But we were sneaking out at night. That chalk line meant nothing in the dark. But mixed bathing, and there's this. So what happens is holiness shifted from what we are to what we looked like in the way we acted. And it became a major turnoff for people. It became something that nobody wanted to be. We didn't even want to be identified as holiness people because it was embarrassing. So holiness started to look outdated. And just wasn't important in our lives. And so this movement happened among those of us that have the same faith base. That if you just believe and you just get saved, that's enough. And James 2:19 says the demons believe as well, and they shudder in fear. But we believed if we could just get somebody to say, I believe and I have faith in God, then that was enough. And it is, but it's kind of that bare minimum. So we want to talk about holiness in a way that isn't a hurdle for you to jump over. It's not a wall to be scaled. Holiness is a way of life that we're being called to. It's not the advanced diploma for the Christian. It's not that you've served so long you get a pen or a watch. Holiness isn't the master's degree or the doctorate work. Holiness is what we're being called to. See, to live in this right relationship with God, this mystery that God does in us and for us. Just like in John 3 when Nicodemus, the teacher, came and talked to Jesus, and Jesus said, Nick, you got to be born again. And immediately, in that moment, when you accept Christ and believe that we are born again, so what does that look like in us? In a way that only can be brought through Christ, in a way that can only be done through Him and in His perfect timing of God. That we are justified. So what that means is that the judicial system of our life, God judiciously grants us full pardon of all our guilt and sin. That when we accept Him and we believe and we say, I want to be born again, and the invitation is there, it's already there. When we accept, then automatically we are justified. He takes the guilt, the pain, the sin, and He wipes it out. Whiteboard, it's clean. And immediately, in the same time that we are regenerated, we are born again, we are made new. And Nicodemus said, how am I going to get back in my mother's womb? He goes, that's not it. It's heart. It's not physical. It's what's happening here. And then at the same time, all this is happening, is that you and I become adopted, that we're made as a son and daughter of God. So all these things are happening, and they happen in that moment in time. And you'll hear in the old days, it would say it was a crisis moment in your life when you accepted Christ. And that crisis isn't bad. The crisis just means it happened. It wasn't this process. There are people that believe that it is a process, and that's okay. But process also could mean that you just go to church day after day after day, and you have no proclamation of faith, and boom, then all of a sudden you're a believer. Well, I can sit in my garage for months on end. That doesn't make me a car. There has to be a point in time when we say, God, what do I have to do? And we are justified, regenerated, and adopted. And He's calling us into this holy life. 1 Peter chapter 2 says this, verse 9 and 10. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into this wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So how do we go from believing to living for God? How do we go from more than I just want to be in this relationship that I believe that I want to go into a deeper relationship because I believe what happens. I believe what happens is there are people that have these spiritual highs. They become followers. They say they believe, yet we never consecrate ourselves. We never give ourselves to God fully. We just never do. What we do is we have just enough faith and just enough Jesus to make ourselves miserable. Because we're stuck between, I can't do enough and the standard's too high, I'll never make it. I can't do enough. And you feel hopeless. You feel like I can't win. Not only that, I've missed this whole spiritual high that I had, and I'm spinning. I'm doing all the things I know to do, and it's all about performance. But God's calling us into this deeper journey. He's calling us to offer ourselves at this moment in time where we say, I don't want my will, but I want yours. That I want to live dependent on him, not just independent with him. That's a big difference. You and I are people of wherewithal. We can get things done. Some of you got hired at your job, not for the grades you had in high school or college, but because you were a get-her-done type person. You got hired because your boss said, I need somebody to tackle a project. You got that. I got that. But that's when we're dependent on us. And what we're calling and talking about now is moving from that dependence with God. Believe, but I'm still going to be me and do my things, to where we step back and we say, you know what? I've tried it that route and it stinks. It doesn't work. I end up coming short. So either I go back to the old way of living, law and lust, and maybe go back to lost and just hibernate till my end comes, or we make a decision to where we step into it. And we say, I want to live dependent on you. See, we believe there's this marked difference. There's a distinction between having a pure heart and mature character. That when we make the decision, we call it entire sanctification. When we say that I'm giving you my heart and I will be dependent on you and you will lead me, that I'm saying that you will step into me and give me this pure heart, but also that I understand that I've got to mature in my character. We have flaws. If you go to Christ and you were a jerk before you came to Christ, chances are you're going to be a jerk later. Now, hopefully, God will continue to show you the ways to live. Hopefully. But there are things about our character that are still there. So how do we mature? See, as a youth pastor, I used to say it was this resident of your heart, that we asked Christ to be the resident of our heart, and then we asked him to be the president. And residents have the same voice in a community, but the president leads the community. So how do we consecrate ourselves? Because see, I believe that the holy life that God's calling us to, that people begin to look at it and say, I can't measure that. I can't live up to it. Why try? Why try? I found this article that I absolutely loved, and it was by Dr. Joel Scandrett from Wheaton College, and he wrote this, and this is what he says. He says, while we tip our cap to the importance of holiness, many in our culture don't view us as morally different in any meaningful way, except to see us as hypocrites. See, the world is looking for us to be different. The world is looking for us to be different. Once we start saying that we're a believer, they realize there's something different. He goes on, and just to kind of paraphrase a little bit of this article, he says, you want to catch this, that sanctification really means to literally means to be set apart. And that it's more than a morality or holy actions. It's more than doing the next right thing. But biblical holiness is described as a unique relationship that God has established with his people, that holiness and sanctification is this unique relationship. So when we talk about the love quadrant, that's what we're longing for. And we said last week that there's a hole in our heart that we just can't feel. So we try it with the law, we try it with lust, we try it here, we try it there. And then all of a sudden we get this. And what we've been craving all along, what will wipe out the misery, is what God is crying out to do for you, and he did for me, and he does for others, is I want you to live a holy life, this unique relationship. Before you and I can be good, we're called to be holy. We cannot reduce holiness down to actions. It's more than just believing in God. It means that we are being united with Jesus in and through the Holy Spirit. Paul wrote in Galatians 2:20, I've been crucified with Christ. He also said that I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. He said in Colossians 3:3 this, our lives are hidden with Christ in God. In Ephesians 2:6, he said, and that we have been seated with God in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus. So in this mysterious way that God functions, but also factually by the virtual union that you and I have with Jesus, we participate in the life of God in holiness. We can say boldly that we're in Christ. God's holiness is our holiness. We are in him and he is in us. So we're already holy. He's already consecrated it. Now we have to live it. So what does holiness look like quickly? What does holiness look like for us? It means that holy people are different. We stand out. I mean, we all want to be accepted. Nobody wants to be the oddball. Nobody wants to be holier than thou. It's not about us becoming monks or Mother Teresa. It is about us living a life that is different than what the world talks about. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 talks about, transform yourselves. Do not be stuck in the patterns of the world. And that's what we've been called to do. That we think differently than the world. We think differently. The way we view people, the way we treat people that are different than us, the way we treat and act and speak, that we live differently than the world, that our lives reflect the things of God, that we just love differently. The things that are important to him are important to us. I'm going to tell you, it is really hard. It is really hard to be holy and cranky at the same time. It's hard. I don't know how you do it. That God is calling us out to live these holy life. That we're going to love differently, we're going to talk differently, we're going to think differently, we're going to live differently. There just comes this point in time in our relationship that you and I got to decide we're all in. I'm going to tell you, believing is the bare minimum, and I'm not going to tell you you're not getting into heaven. It's not your get out of, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. But I think if you want to take that next step in your spiritual journey to say, I want to be more. I want to be more. I want to be this fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ. I want to be all in. I mean, I remember in college vividly kneeling at an altar like this, weeping. I can't tell you what anybody said. I can't tell you the songs that were sung. But I can remember struggling with the fact that I couldn't figure out why God wanted me to do what he asked me to do. And I remember just kneeling and weeping by myself and just crying out, God, you must have made a mistake. Because I can't measure this. I can't measure up. I don't have what it takes. You're calling me out in this life that I don't think I can live. Just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I remember vividly. But what I want you to know is that God has laid out a plan so perfectly and divinely for us to accept. He doesn't make promises he can't keep. He doesn't oversell and underdeliver. He just simply offers.